remember when the MDGs were being put forward, there was so much talk about the level of ambition of the MDGs and how this will never work because they are too far-fetched and how can we do this and so on. In the end, when they closed last year, it's interesting to see how much progress was made. And it probably underlines the fact that what gets measured gets done, or at least the focus is on getting it done. And I think that's an interesting frame. The SDGs have therefore built on that initial momentum and come forward with a much broader plank. As you recall, most of the MDGs were focused on the health and education sectors. So looking at the SDGs is going to be a different kind of a challenge. Let's see how we go forward in implementing them and so on. And one of the things, of course, with the SDGs is that there is nothing that will happen without partnerships. And that's going to be the subject of our lunchtime talk today. I am delighted to introduce, I don't know where he disappeared now. Ah, there he is, okay. I'm delighted to introduce my friend and colleague, Indran Naidoo. Indran's the head of evaluation at UNDP. He's had an illustrious career working through different parts and always focused on monitoring evaluation. He was he's South African, so he worked in the government of South Africa before, in the Ministry of Lands as the head of monitoring evaluation there. And then he moved on to bigger things and became the Deputy Director General of the unit which was responsible for monitoring and evaluation across the country. He's also been involved in a lot of evaluation capacity building, done a lot of work with countries, but also in building capacity through agencies. So AFRIA and SAMEA and so on, he's been involved in the business for a very long time. He's going to talk us through the partnerships on SDGs, what it takes, and how we can then start to build on to get to the SDGs going forward. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome him with a big round of applause.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, Rakesh, for your kind invitation, and congratulations on this excellent event. It's also a pleasure to see many colleagues here, former colleagues. I was last in Abidjan 18 years ago when discussions took place with Mohamed Manai at the African Development Bank on the formation of the African Evaluation Network and Association. So it's good to be back after all this time and see that they are now going to be hosting their 7th. And I think it really points to the fact that a lot is happening in Africa. It's an honor for me to share some thoughts with you this afternoon for reflection, partly descriptive and partly provocative, because as we move towards the SDGs, there's a lot that we need to do. So my talk is going to basically focus on 4 areas, one of which is a recap. The first point I make is that evaluation is a collective pursuit. The discussions in the last 2 days have indicated that whilst you have silos and ministries, in order to be effective, you need to work collaboratively. By no means does that mean you undermine the independence, credibility, and utility, and that is the tension you have. And the high fives are central to transforming Africa, and evaluation plays a key role on it. So to move ahead in what I call the national evaluation capacity journey that really began in 2009 in Morocco, when Oscar was over in the office, was a very small conversation that moved to South Africa, Brazil, Thailand, over 5 areas, and moved from a conversation of what governments do to a discussion on how can governments work with civil society and evaluation professionals to build evaluation capacity. And last year, we broke all records, and it was an honor to have Rakesh in his office and many of you there in Bangkok, where we came up with the Bangkok Declaration. But really what this points to is a bigger issue, and that is that evaluation is no longer the pursuit of either the professionals or the government departments. It has a range of players that come together and have conversations on both methodology and strategy. And we just have had released recently the proceedings of that event. But a further point that's significant coming to Africa is that there's been a great growth in the development and participation of African governments over the years. And one would see that in 2015, we had 20 countries. And when we talk about countries, we're talking about UNDP program together with representatives from the countries in Africa who came and have had an engagement on this. And it's not just a talk shop, it's to come with very practical solutions. And it was very high level, including people from ministries of finance, etc., who found it useful. So that indicates that it's not just a pursuit of a unit or a group of professionals or civil society, it is really a collective. Moving on, we need to remind ourselves that evaluation is for citizen benefits. And that changes the optic, is that we are responsible to ensure that the organization we serve meets its mandate. Your fundamental client is that mandate. It is not a tool for management. That's a secondary issue. And the office that I lead is an independent office which focuses on the accountability and, of course, the learning dimension. But when we were last year in Thailand, we did it with IDEV, which many of you are members of, together with the government of Thailand. And we came up with the notion that to be effective, you need to blend principles of independence, credibility, utility with practice. Then only will you be effective. You'll either be otherwise too much on the practice and too much on the theory. And we came up with some very good perspectives on that. And it came at a good time because it really links to taking stock of the MDGs and moving towards the Sustainable Development Goals. SDGs and National Evaluation Capacity, together with the 500 persons, we came up with what's called the Bangkok Declaration, which was really a roadmap on how we should collectively engage in evaluation. And that is charting the way in terms of the further conversations. And of course, the proceedings on the conference are also publicly available. But more significantly, we need to recognize that, let's go back to Brazil conversation, that at the end of the day, we are ICU people. The U is the utility, but we're not going to get utility if we do not have good credibility. And to get the credibility, it's not just methods, we also need to be well located, and that is the independence. So the conversations in Brazil was, how do you achieve this independence, credibility, and utility in a way that actually brings about high quality information to bring about changes? Now, the Bangkok Declaration set a roadmap that was very ambitious because many of us wrote it. And it was a very complex process. It was a sort of negotiated text. But the key issues that came up, there needs to be national and local data systems, which you've spoken about. You need to establish frameworks. You have to have resources, create opportunities, develop systems, many parts, many players, and its principles. And establishing evaluation training programs are the various things that you need to do in order to build evaluation capacity. And the fact that there's many, and I'll talk about it in a short while, many more evaluation associations in Africa than there were 18 years ago when I was here, attests to a move in the right direction. I make the point that evaluation has grown in Africa, more significantly than is reported. And the progress towards professionalization of evaluation is visible. We see it when we evaluate the various programs across the continent. The ADB and independent evaluation has made a very significant contribution to the debate, and I'll talk a little about the office that I head. The work of the IDEV is critical for development attainment in the ADBs. It's the reflection for the course correction. And the African Development Bank investment in building an evaluation culture has helped. So the work that's happened here has had very, very tangible and real benefits, which comes in your publication, Evaluation Matters. And I pulled this edition, which was a special edition 2 years ago. And I looked at what the president said then. He said, what does it take? The flag and national anthem? No. Also, the prosaic and substantial things such as a functioning society, strong economy, and strong institutions. And unless we can move in through evaluation and ensure that, we really are going to be stuck at the flag and the national anthem. I come to AfRIA, and I'm very happy to see Agado and my other colleagues here. And if you look at the beginning when it started and moving on till 2014, the conversations. But the greatest proof that evaluation is alive in Africa and is of high quality is the launch of the African Evaluation Journal, which for the first time captures experiences that happen here. Because for too long, the profession has been dominated with a conversation that evaluation only happens in the north. That's where the thinking, the concepts, and the practice happens. When you move on the ground, you find it very, very visible, and just the readership of that has gone quite significant. I'm very happy to have been associated with AfRIA, in particular the 2004 and subsequent events. And UNDP will continue to support AfRIA because it's about the development of the continent. The office is independent. We have a policy, functionally independent. We report directly to the board and donors, and we engage with the evaluation community. But what's clear is that it reports directly to and is accountable to the executive board, which represents the 170 member states. So the work that is produced is taken very seriously. We've invested a lot in outreach and products. There was a lot of conversation about the hostile thick report. We do that, but we also have infographics, videos, clips, etc., because in the era now, we really need to get people to understand and to read what's happening. Very practically, the work that we do in the continent, since 2012, my office has covered $3.4 billion of programming. We've evaluated $3.4 billion of programming. We've done 15 ADRs, which is another way of saying independent country-level evaluations, and we've got 4 planned next year. And in all of these situations, we have debriefed the governments. So we've been around. From Liberia in 2012 until the very Zimbabwe last year, each of the pieces of work, we spent an entire week sharing the results with the counterparts, the stakeholders, the donors, etc., and they found it useful. And the recommendations are there, so it brings about a change. Those topics which the African Development Bank deals with, the 4s, the 5s, the institution, the state building, are the same topics that we also evaluate, not just of UNDP, but the other agencies that are in play. So really, the initiative, institutions, inclusiveness has been attained through interventions. And I would argue that independent evaluations, because of their credibility, has a great amount of utility at many levels. You all know the Human Development Report, which has been contested in various areas. We evaluated it, and we came with a set of recommendations. We spoke about its effectiveness, efficiency, sustainability. And what we've included in all evaluation reports now are the management responses. So in the main report, right up front, what we said and what they said they're going to do. It's a part of transparency. It's a way in which you can bring about the tracking of progress. This is something new we've done in the last few years. Let's move now to the pillars. The MDGs, the SDGs, lessons for the 5s, and what does this mean in practice? Before, just at the end of the MDGs, we evaluated the MDGs, the UNDP contribution to it, and we came up with this evaluation. And of course, we found some strengths, but we found many weaknesses, which clearly indicates that if these matters are not addressed, you'll have exactly the same problem with the SDGs. And because it is a more comprehensive agenda, with a lot more, the main issue being universality, it means there's a greater complexity. And the other hat I wear as UNEG Vice Chair, focusing on SDGs, we are trying to provide guidance and support on what does it mean from a measurability point of view. In most of the governments we work with around the world, they want support on how do you evaluate the SDGs and what are the initiatives you can bring through. Last year, it was clearly stated that UNDP should continue reporting on the MDGs and the SDGs within the framework of the Global Partnership on Sustainable Development. And UNDP focuses on just 3 areas, which you've spoken about: poverty, reduced inequality, peace and justice. So those are the areas of responsibility. Obviously, we will look at it much more broadly, but that takes place within the broader ambit of sustainable development, democratic governance, peace building, climate and disaster and resilience. So apart from these evaluations, we also produce focused evaluations on the impact of the environment, the Small Grants Program, climate and adaptation, governance, etc. The high 5s also resonate with UNDP, with the UN system. The question of light and power in Africa, feed Africa, this morning's discussion, industrialize Africa, integrate Africa, improve the quality of life of people of Africa in some way or the other. When we look at the program, which we normally take about 7 or 8 months, the average program, $15, $30, $40 million, these are the areas that we try to see to what extent have the various initiatives, not just UNDP, contributed to this part. In terms of the Sustainable Development Goal, it's clear that UNDP reports, but we have UNEG contribution. We also have Oscar Garcia, who's also a vice chair here today, and he has a responsibility, one of the 4, and we say what we can offer. So to the evaluation community now, we are working with our UN evaluators, our 43 agencies, to help build their capacity so they become more astute in the support of the SDGs. Finally, we need to recognize that the world has changed and we need to do things differently. It does not mean that what was done in the past is irrelevant or inconsequential, but that the dynamics have changed. And with this, we note that the adoption of the norms and standards for evaluation by UNEG that took place in April in Geneva this year, after 11 years, clearly entrenched independence, credibility, and utility, but also brought in other perspectives, other rubrics in how to assess. And we believe that paves the way for the change to happen. And we are currently working on operationalizing this. These are the norms and standards. They will be available in all languages on our website. They're accessible. We have the norms, the standards, key issues of budget. You've got to have a budget to do it. Independence of budget, independence of topic, governance issues are all articulated. That was a long negotiation. And I can understand why it took 11 years before it was revised. But what's critical are the 3 points here. We need to reflect on the continued viability and utility of the OECD DAC criteria and its applicability in the new development landscape. Secondly, there's been a change in development and funding. We're not talking just about donor and aid money. We're talking about countries themselves contributing to their development efforts. And surely that should change the relationship of the North-South and a whole lot of other dynamics. And we need to incorporate the UN and the UNEG criteria that is in here. So we will be in a short while looking at the rubric and lens that we classically use to come up with something that is more comprehensive, that better answers the true development questions around the world in Africa, that then provides a more meaningful, deeper analysis of what the issues are and how it can be resolved. And that's the conversation we are going to be having at various levels in the agency. Finally, I ask 3 fundamental questions. The first one, how to work in partnership to effectively build capacity. UNDP has recognized, as has other agencies, that on your own you cannot build capacity. It's a long, difficult process. It's iterative. But to go into partnership is also very difficult. We know it. We've tried to do so. In some cases, we've been successful, and in some lesser so. There was a question that emerged on professionalization, some notion that only evaluators from a certain part are professional. How do we balance the question of the formal qualification with the experience, with issues of language, with issues of competence, of content experience, before we come up with more, I would say, certified or able evaluators? One of the challenges we have, we don't have a global certification sort of committee. We're members of UNEG, et cetera, and we can get pushback. So we have to build our skills as evaluators. Secondly, most importantly, we need to avoid being elite. Right? That we produce high-quality information, that it goes back to the bureaucracy. The whole idea of evaluation is to ensure that the world citizens improve. But the question is, will the voice of citizens be genuinely considered as part of the reporting obligations for the SDGs? There's great statements of what should happen. Whether it happens or not is a separate issue. And some of our earlier discussions looking at the practice indicates that the process is moving again to become a technical, at least specialist one, with citizen voices not really feeding in more broadly. And finally, this relates to the evaluation offices, and we've started a bit. How do we as evaluators attain collaboration in the context of joint evaluations and joint programs? No program is delivered in isolation. There's multiple players. And one of the conversations is, how do we evaluate it in a more rational and joint way? Quite often, beneficiaries get frustrated. A set of evaluators from one agency comes and asks them questions, and they go, and then another agency comes, and it goes on and on. But none of this feeds into a broader gestalt, and that's probably the most complex. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm happy to take some questions, and these are just some thoughts that I'm sharing with you on the subject.
Je voudrais remercier M. Andrian, d'autant plus que l'année dernière, en 2015, j'avais été retenu. L'année dernière, en 2015, j'avais été retenu par le bureau indépendant du PNUD à New York pour évaluer la gouvernance des résultats au Gabon avec M. Roberto. Et je peux vraiment vous avouer que le rapport qui a été produit pour cette évaluation n'est pas bon, puisque j'étais chargé spécialement de l'aspect gouvernance. Il y avait Mme Nsam qui était chargée de l'environnement et M. Ba, je crois, qui était chargé de la partie santé. Ce que nous avons constaté, c'est que d'abord, le leadership du PNUD est réellement prouvé sur le terrain et dans tous nos pays. Et il faut féliciter le PNUD. D'ailleurs, le représentant du PNUD est le coordonnateur de tout le système des Nations Unies au Gabon. Mais sauf qu'il n'y a pas eu appropriation du programme pays durant les 4 ans. Ce qui fait qu'il serait difficile, s'il n'y a pas une explication, une appropriation du cadre logique des projets sur lesquels travaille le PNUD, pour pouvoir ensuite les évaluer et intéresser les évaluateurs, par exemple, nationaux, ou même les bénéficiaires de ce programme. Alors, s'il faut ajouter justement l'évaluation conjointe avec la BAD et, bien entendu, toutes les parties prenantes, il me semble que là, c'est la plus grande partie, selon moi, puisque vraiment je suis rentré dans le PNUD pour y travailler, il me semble qu'il y a d'abord ce problème à résoudre. Le PNUD lui-même doit d'abord faire ce qu'on appelle l'aggiornamento, c'est-à-dire sur soi-même, regarder s'il y a appropriation de ces programmes pays. Et comme ça, vraiment, la coopération avec la BAD sera une très bonne chose. Mais je répète que le PNUD a le leadership dans nos pays. Et il faut vraiment que le PNUD tire les autres partenaires afin que les évaluations réussissent. Et ce serait une bonne chose pour faire réussir l'Afrique. Merci.
Okay, thank you, Indran, for this bright presentation. I would like to react on the considerations that you have put forward, mainly how to work in partnership to effectively build capacity. And I think that UNDP, I think it was from my predecessor who said, the good thing about UNDP. Myself, I'm a witness of the national capacity development conferences, etc. And I'm wondering to which extent UNDP can also coordinate for the national capacity development in the world, because we have seen a lot of overlaps. Every institution would like to accompany its operations with a capacity building, and we have seen in the different cases where there is a competition and how best we can get results. The second question for me is, you mentioned how do we attain collaboration amongst evaluation in the context of joint evaluation and joint program. Our experience with joint evaluations have been extremely painful and costly. So is there anything that would probably, we know that we have also good practices in joint evaluation produced by the DAC and some other issues around joint evaluations. But do we really, are we really humble to conduct joint evaluations but focused on some topics rather than to get for a country or assessing joint assistance strategies, whatever, which is too complicated for us, which what we need probably to have quick wins rather than getting out, of all these cost implications on our institutions. Okay, thank you.
My name is Safiatou Diallo. I am from the Senegalese Evaluation Association. In your presentation, you talked about capacity building. That highlights the importance of training. We noticed that many people are interested to evaluation, and I will take the specific case of Senegal. We noticed that there is a lack of training in evaluation. For example, postgraduate training. I want to know how can all key actors in evaluation, I mean National Evaluation Society, organizations like the African Bank of Development, the PNUD, UNICEF, can work together to support, can work together in order to respond to that need. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Fred Soderbaum from University of Gothenburg in Sweden. Thank you for a brilliant presentation. My question regards the uncertainty that we have about data. Both the MDG and the SDG approach to the development favors targeted goals, targets, indicators, which is different from other development approaches. Now, if we link or relate this to evaluation, it requires some quality on the data. And in many African countries, we have extreme uncertainty about the data. We don't know how many people live in Nigeria. We don't know in other countries how many people live there. There is a general uncertainty about the data. So how do we reconcile this uncertainty of data with the things that you have spoken about? Thank you.
Merci, merci encore une fois pour effectivement le partenariat et l'appui que le programme des Nations Unies pour le développement apporte effectivement à AFREA, à côté d'autres partenaires effectivement, dont la Banque africaine de développement. Je voudrais poser deux questions. La première, vous avez abordé tout à l'heure les questions de réviser les critères, un certain nombre de critères et un certain nombre d'éléments par rapport à ce qui a été fait déjà avec l'OCDE. Donc, dans ce processus-là, va-t-il être mené un peu, le PNUD va-t-il prendre ça en tant que leader avec le consensus des autres pour aller justement dans l'amélioration de la définition des critères avec les autres partenaires, ou bien il s'agit-il de faire un certain nombre de critères spécifiques que l'UNDP pense être assez convenables pour les objectifs de développement durable? Ça, c'est la première question. La deuxième question, c'est effectivement par rapport au renforcement des capacités. UNDP a fait beaucoup d'efforts et fait beaucoup d'efforts dans ce sens. Mais la question qui se pose maintenant, c'est de voir comment est-ce qu'il faut harmoniser et mutualiser le renforcement des capacités entre les différents partenaires. Parce que la BAD peut faire aussi le renforcement des capacités, UNDP en font, la Banque mondiale en fait, et quelque part, il n'y a pas de durabilité dans ce renforcement de capacités. Et nous, en tout cas, en tant qu'association active dans l'évaluation, on a l'impression que c'est toujours un éternel recommencement. Et si vous avez regardé même au niveau des différents conférences sur le renforcement des capacités, vous n'avez jamais les mêmes personnes et on ne sait pas est-ce qu'on a progressé ou bien on a fait un recommencement. par rapport à cette question de renforcement des capacités. Merci.
Thank you. Can I take that set of questions? Okay. Thank you very much for the questions. I'm not sure if I'll be able to answer fully on all of them, but I'll try. The first question, the gentleman in Gabon on the model. The model that we use is the evaluations are led by an evaluator from my office, and I take full responsibility in final sign-off. But the practicality is we use teams that are from the country. So depending on the capacity in the country, we recruit people to assist us in the various areas of data gathering and writing up the areas in the different streams. In some cases, most cases, I believe it has worked well. In some cases, it has not. And the reasons for that are multiple, one of which is the evaluability of the program itself sometimes is a problem. What we are evaluating is evaluating what the organization said it's going to do. But if the log frame and the criteria and the indicators are vague, when it comes to evaluating, it also becomes a challenge. I know I particularly debriefed in those instances, and there were challenges around that. We're never going to have a situation where everyone is happy with everything we say on the evaluations, and I don't even try to do so. But long as we bring up the debate and there's enough discussion, I think it's fine, because the reality of the development question throughout the world and even here is that there's multiple interpretations of what progress means, which goes back to the issue of the criteria, and the conversation is we need to have a deeper discussion on the development criteria, the development lens, and what we're measuring and what constitutes success. By no means am I saying the criteria that has been used, which we still refer in our reports, is irrelevant. We use them. But we want to actually reflect, now that things are changed, what else we add in order to make it more grounded and more relevant. So that's the point. But I'd be happy to discuss further on that particular case. The second set of questions, Mohammed, on terms of partnership and in particular, and the question of joint. I'll start with the joint and say joint is very difficult. I did a joint evaluation with the Global Environmental Facility, the Independent Evaluation Office. It took us twice as long as we thought it's going to be. We had a lot of tension. Eventually, we got it out, and it was good. But it is not easy, because you're dealing with personalities, you're dealing with organizations that have different ways of doing things. In as far as we can, it's good. I know the board keeps telling us, do joint. Joint sometimes costs more and takes longer than if you do it on your own. And we have many experiences of that. I think it's good for all of us to try doing a joint evaluation with a like-minded office. I think it has a benefit in that regard. Your issue on partnership and coordination, UNDP's role in the policy, the new evaluation policy that was adopted in June, is not to build evaluation capacity across the globe. In fact, that's not even all it says of the Independent Evaluation Office is to facilitate some events where it can and leave the organization if it has resources to do so. So it's not a key offering of it. My predecessor, Saraswati Menon, had put this in place, and I just continued with it, making it broader, but I had a good basis to work on it. Because I don't believe a UN or any other agency can build capacity. It has to come from multiple areas. We can support it as best we can, and we've done it with the NEC event. We do it when we join evaluation events across the globe. That's the best we can. We need to be quite modest about what is possible, given also the issue of budget. As the budgets go down, evaluation and capacity building is not viewed as a priority as other more issues. So that comes up there. The third question, the Senegalese, on training. Again, the only time once in 2 years when we have the National Evaluation Capacity event, we offer training. That's all we can do with the resources that we have. But we hope that around the event, other events happen. And we have found that to be the case. Because you cannot, from an international perspective, get in and understand all the needs. But as best we can, we partner with the AFRIAs, with the associations across the globe and networks to support and to push this process, because it's extremely difficult on that issue. The fourth question on data. If the MDGs was difficult and it pointed out to the lack of data, the SDGs is going to be 17 times more difficult. And already we find that when we're looking for national data and the lack of baselines and the statistical is the biggest challenge. It's for that reason in Bangkok, we had the UN Statistical Office come in, because they have a key responsibility in the SDGs, and tell us what they could get on. Because the biggest challenge with the SDGs, the indicators, the multiple streams, etc., is the high reliance on national data, which in itself is a problem, which makes it difficult to engage in either moving from baseline upwards for country level or any comparability whatsoever. I think it's a very ambitious set of targets. I think it's good because it's inclusive, it deals with all the issues, but the challenge will come in a few months when the first reports come out, and already we're beginning to see that as being quite a problem. The last question on the criteria. We do not intend getting global consensus on evaluation criteria. It will not happen. What we want to do is to have a deeper discussion on the various criteria that's used by the various networks, and to see how best it customizes to the agencies or the organizations we work for. That will be a modest contribution. For the very simple reason, to a marked extent, when we engage in evaluation, we already are, it's not goal-free. We're assessing against goals that have been set. The challenge is, what do we mean by relevance, efficiency, effectiveness, and sustainability in different contexts? And what constitutes progress or the lack of progress is the debate that we need to happen. So it has to get more gradated, a greater taxonomy on that issue, which comes again to capacity building. Last year was the first time, I think historically, when all three networks got together and jointly did the NEC conference in Bangkok. We had the ECG, we had the DAC, and we had the UNEG. And that was a great strength because we were able to share. But that's not going to be enough because each agency, there's different networks and they're going to continue. But as far as is possible, with the intention that I have in UNEG and the other colleagues here, I think we want to continue that deeper discussion in that regard. I invite all of you to go to our website. You'll see what we have been grappling with, our strengths and our weaknesses. And the area that really points is we are constantly in a process of reforming the systems we use in order to keep them as relevant as they possibly could for the multiple levels. But thank you very much for your set of questions and attention.
Thank you for your presentation. I have just a little comment, and you don't need to answer me, just a little comment. I wanted to share it with you. In your presentation, there is a map for Africa, and I think, as a Moroccan citizen, I think the map is wrong. I'm sorry, I had to share it. Can you go to I think it's slide number 3. I'm sorry, don't take it personally. You don't need to answer me, but I had to share my point of view.
Is this the one?
No, it's the slide number 3. Number 3. The one, yes, this one. This is not Morocco. There is a part missing.